Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Point here, and welcome to a video that's several months late. Well, shit. Raidou Remastered was a game that I had a pretty strange amount of hype for, considering I'd never played either of the Raidou games prior to its announcement. At first, I was kind of just like, oh cool, a Raidou 1 remaster. I guess that finally gives me an excuse to play that game. But as the release got closer and I learned that there was going to be more than just a simple upscaled port with a bunch of voice acting slapped onto it, I suddenly got a lot more interested to the point that I decided to play through both of the original games before it came out. I then proceeded to only finish the first one and get 3 hours into the second one because despite being a massive Persona fan, I am actually shit at time management. And now that I finally finished the remaster, I'm actually glad that I chose to play the original first because this remaster is... oh boy, it's something else. So without further ado, let's go. So to start off, I'm going to give some spoiler-free thoughts just for people that are curious about whether or not they should get the game. Yes, I 100% recommend that you pick this game up. If you're a fan of the original game, well, what the hell are you looking at me for? Just go and buy it already. If you're someone who hasn't played the original and is wondering whether or not they should play it, normally I would recommend that you play the original version of something first, especially in regards to Mega 10, the only exception being Persona 3, since FPS just completely invalidates the original in every way. There are now 2 exceptions. Oh, they're really Scott the Walls ass line delivery. Look, is this remaster a significantly different version from the original? Yes, but that's actually a good thing. Spoiler for the next section, but the original Raidou was disappointing, to say the least. It left a lot to be desired. This remaster effectively turns the game into what I always wanted it to be, so yeah, give the original a pass and pick up the remaster. And for someone who's never played a Mega 10 game before, well, first off, hi, how did you get here? You must be really confused. But also, this game is basically DMC meets Yakuza meets Pokemon, so if that sounds interesting to you, pick it up. Anyway, enough general talk. From here on out, spoilers are free game, so you have been warned. Oh, one take, let's fucking go. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I played the original Raidou before the remaster release for the sake of research, so I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the original first. When I first started Raidou 1, I was super into it. A 1920s detective mystery about a girl being possessed by a demon with an action RPG gameplay style? Sign me up. Everything from Kaya's introduction to the slow unraveling of the story behind the Daidoji family curse to the sudden appearance of the Red Capes, this shit was right up my alley and I was hooked. There was just one problem. The gameplay. See, Raidou 1 has a very simplistic combat system. What I mean by that is Raidou only has 4 moves. That's it. A 3-hit sword combo, a charged spin attack, a powerful jab, and a block, which leaves him feeling very limited in battle and causes battles to feel very tedious and samey really quickly. And it's a shame because the overworld gameplay is actually really good. Having to go around, search for leads, actually use demons outside of battle and give commands and all this stuff, send demons out on field runs. Like, the whole thing really immerses you into the role of being a devil summoner, which is something that I really wasn't expecting this game to do to this extent, but it was fucking awesome. But even it has its own issues, because for some fucking reason, they decided to make it so that you can get random encounters in the overworld. Now, look, I do not hate random encounters outright. Sure, I think they're a really annoying and outdated gameplay mechanic, but I am willing to put up with it for the sake of enjoying a game. But why the hell do they happen outside the Dark Realm? Not only is that extremely annoying, but also it doesn't even make sense in the universe. And it's like, I don't get it, because it doesn't even feel like those sections are built for random encounters. It's all going back and forth between multiple different areas, trying to find the right person to talk to. I'm not even on script right now, by the way. It genuinely feels like those sections weren't designed for random encounters or battles to be in play. It feels like that was added afterwards for the sake of padding, and it is extremely annoying. And unfortunately, the story has its own issues once you get far enough in. See, at the end of episode 5, you finally find Kaya and are introduced to who you presume is going to be the main villain, Munakata. We fight a really cool boss, rescue Kaya, and now we have our new goal and Kaya starts working at the detective agency. However, in episode 6, Kaya starts acting weird. She cuts her hair short out of nowhere and starts talking about some mysterious item that Munakata was searching for. You then spend the entire chapter looking for it, and at the very end, Kaya starts talking weirdly about the fate of the future before floating into the air and disappearing. Holy shit, the demon already possessed her. What a twist, right? Well, unfortunately, the way the game handles this is, to be blunt, complete fucking ass. First off, after she says a bunch of dodgy shit and fucking vanishes, Goto's response is basically just, huh? What happened? When I think it's pretty fucking clear what happened. He then says to head back to the detective agency and talk to Narumi about it. And once you get there, he comes in all beat up, and that's it. Kaya, the girl who has been the driving force of the fucking plot the entire game, has basically been completely dropped from the plot from this point forward. Barely even being mentioned outside of a passing mention here and there until the final fucking episode. That's basically half the fucking game. And worse yet, episodes 7 and 9 are basically just filler chapters that contribute nothing to the fucking story. Episode 7 is basically just a fetch quest where you have to go and help some dude who's a higher up in Yatagarasu that never ends up mattering again. And episode 9 is an episode where you get sent to some other reality where there's like another Raidou, and none of that ever comes back at any point, and it just all feels like a waste of time. Now, that's not to say that the non-filler elements of this section of the game aren't engaging, because they definitely are. Because learning about Munakata and all that stuff, the stuff about him being controlled by a demon, which was actually a pretty cool, if predictable, plot twist. You know, the section where the demon goes into space is really cool. Goto's death actually really got to me. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But the problem was, the entire time, I was just wondering what the fuck was going on with Kaya, because she was literally the main driving force of the plot, like I said, the entire first half of the game. And now it just feels weird that we're just left hanging with that and nobody seems to fucking care. And then once you finally get to episode 12, where we finally get to wrap up her story, it ends up falling flat. The story's definitely interesting, don't get me wrong. Like, the idea of a future Raidou being the one to possess her was legitimately a shock, but it's also rushed. First off, understanding Raidou the 40th's plan relies heavily on context from SMT 1 and 2, which is kind of cool, but having it only be put through optional NPC dialogue is really weird. And also, for those in the West, it really wasn't helpful because those games had never been officially released at the time. I know SMT 1 had the iPhone port, but 1, that wasn't out yet at the time, and 2, even now that barely counts. I don't know, the whole thing was just weird. And that's not even to mention that you only actually find out who she is right before you fight her, which removes any potential for any interesting character development, which was just disappointing to me. So altogether, Raidou 1, I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but it had a lot of issues with both its gameplay and its narrative. So needless to say, I was very interested to see what the remaster would do to improve on the things that were wrong with Raidou 1. So, how did it turn out? So I'm just going to come out and say this off the bat. This genuinely might be the best remaster I have ever played. I'm serious. I don't think there is a single thing that this remaster does that's worse than the original. It's better in literally every single way. It's actually such a big improvement that if it wasn't for the fact that the generic NPCs still use their PS2 models, you genuinely would not be able to tell that this is a 19-year-old game. The game looks really nice visually, despite what people were thinking before it came out. And you no longer fight demons outside of the Dark Realm, like in Raidou 2. And honestly, pretty much every single improvement that was made in Raidou 2, or at least every single improvement that I saw of the 3 hours that I played of it, is backported into this game. No battles in the real world, being able to travel to Gomaden from every save point. The case files are here, and here, okay, yeah, admittedly this is kind of forgettable, not gonna lie. And of course, the entire battle system has now been replaced by an enhanced version of the one from Raidou 2. And my god, is it good. You've got dodging, the ability to use 2 demons at once, light and heavy attacks that you have to balance between to maximize your damage output and mag recovery. Raidou can jump now, which allows the devs to add far more interesting attacks to bosses, along with the ability to call your demons to your side to protect them. Raidou has summoner skill, so that his magic stat actually fucking matters this time. The gun is here, and Honestly, it's only really useful for stunning specific enemies who can teleport. Okay, yeah, admittedly, this was kind of a blunder. There are multiple weapon types now that can change up the heavy attacks for those who want to prioritize damage over mag recovery, though personally, I just stuck to using the sword pretty much the entire game. There's a perfect dodge, which allows you to do a special attack for dodging at the right time, or simply keeping on top of the enemy, though, in all honesty, I could never really get the timing down outside of very specific instances where bosses have an attack built around it, but that's probably just a skill issue if I'm being honest. And there's even a new ultimate attack called Spirit Slash, which unlike the Showtime and Therapies from Persona 5 and 3, that felt weird to say, okay, actually isn't broken. It takes a decent amount of time to charge up and does a good but not absurd amount of damage. So, fuck it. Well done, Atlas. You finally made a super move that isn't stupidly broken. Just don't fuck it up next time, please. And that's just the stuff, along with a few other things, that it takes from Raidou 2. There's also a lot of new stuff here, like fast travel, and thank God, because a lot of the overworld gameplay, like I mentioned before, is just going back and forth between places, so that really helps. The game actually gives you a waypoint, which is extremely helpful, but also felt really unnecessary at different points. You can fast travel to the Dark Realm, I forgot to mention that before. The fusion system actually makes sense now and has all the new features introduced in SMT5. You can get duplicate demons and carry way more than the standard 12, which was something that I found very surprising, but not entirely bad, going way more over a Pokemon vibe with that one. You can call demons, you don't have to call demons out manually in the overworld to use anymore, which is a fucking godsend, seriously. If you haven't played the original, having to change your demon every single time you wanted to use an overworld ability was a pain in the balls, so this was a very welcome change. And the most surprising change to me was that they actually removed random encounters. Seriously, the improvements made to this game are so mental that it honestly just feels like a modern Atlas game. People talk about remasters and remakes getting mixed up, and games like this are the reason why. This shit is fucking insane. Especially considering Atlas's previous 2 remasters were a bare minimum glorified port with Nocturne Remastered, and whatever the fuck the P3P remaster was supposed to be, if you can even fucking call it that. But that's just the gameplay improvements. There are 2 other things I want to talk about, starting with... One of the first things announced about this remaster was that it was going to add full voice acting to the game, and I'm happy to say it turned out fantastic. Stephen Fu is really good as Raidou. Protagonists are usually really hard to talk about when it comes to voice acting in Mega 10 since they're usually silent, but here not only do we get alternate Raidou, but we also get actual lines from normal Raidou at the end of the game, which give us a better idea of what his voice is like. And I think it works really well. Definitely fits the character. Ray Chase also kills it as Goto. I actually didn't know how to feel about his voice at first, since some of the dialogue sounds a little weird. What? But by the end of the game, I really came around to like his take on the character. He does a really good job portraying Goto's stoic mentor side and his occasionally jokey and mischievous side, which was a nice touch. Lucine Dodge, whose name I still have no idea if I'm pronouncing right, absolutely nails Narumi. This is another one that I didn't really know how to feel about, since I always imagined Narumi having a British accent, entirely based on the fact that he calls women birds. Like, I know that's really specific, but I can't help it. My brain is just wired to associate that with British people. But once I got over that, I absolutely loved his take on Narumi. He perfectly conveys both his more laid-back and absent-minded side, as well as his more serious side. Dawn M. Bennett, unsurprisingly, fucking nails it as Tai. She already gave one of my favorite performances as Aegis in Persona 3 Reload, so it's no surprise that she kills it here too. She absolutely nails Tai's like upbeat, cocky attitude to a T. And finally, for the main cast, we have Kaylee Mills as Kaya, who gives a perfectly minimalist performance. She does a fucking brilliant job at making Kaya sound like a normal girl compared to all the over-the-top characters in the rest of the cast. And on top of that, she does a really good job at changing up her tone and cadence when voicing Raidou the 40th, making it obvious that someone else is at the wheel besides Kaya. Aside from the main cast, we also have Patrick Saito, I want to give a quick nod to, who returns as Victor and kills it as always, as well as Chris Okawa as Rasputin, who, seriously, this dude captured Rasputin's vibe perfectly. No notes. Like, I genuinely don't think this could have been more perfect. Anyway, now that I've gotten voice acting out of the way, let's move on to the thing that surprised me the most about this game. So like I said earlier, I had a lot of issues with the original game's storytelling, but I never expected them to actually change the story like they did. They didn't change anything too severe, but they tweaked it just enough to where my previous complaints don't really bother me anymore. First off, they foreshadow Raidou the 40th's identity way earlier and reveal it in episode 9 as opposed to right before the fight, leaving way more time to build up to it and expand upon it. They also add a lot of dialogue during the boss that goes deeper into her motivations and flashes her out way more than the original game ever did. Some people were mad that they toned down the SMT 1 and 2 references, and to an extent I can understand that, but I think they still make it relatively clear that she comes from the SMT 1 and 2 timeline. And also, I don't think it's a bad thing to remove context that a lot of people aren't going to understand. Like, yeah, it's cool for the people that have played those games, but let's be real, most people who are playing this probably haven't, because those games either were never released in English or were only ever released in English once and have to be played through fan translations. So I don't really see it as a bad thing. If it bothers people, I can understand it, but I don't really see it as a major issue. They also do a much better job at keeping Kaya part of the story after she vanishes. They bring her up more, and the added context of knowing about Raidou the 40th earlier definitely adds to that too. There's also a free DLC that adds some entries to your detective log that go way more in depth as to who Raidou the 40th actually is and what the future she comes from is like, just for the people that want the added context, which also should hopefully help with the people that were mad about the SMT 1 and 2 things being removed, but whatever. I also really appreciated that the alternate universe played a much bigger role in the story, since in the original, like I said, it was basically just a filler episode, but here, not only is it where you first get confirmation that the thing possessing Kaya is a future Raidou, but alternate Goto actually appearing in the final episode was a nice touch too. Definitely makes the chapter feel way more justified. I also really like that they confirm Goto is alive right away now, because it was kind of weird whenever he just kind of showed back up in Raidou 2 with no explanation, so explaining it here was definitely a nice touch. So yeah, this remaster ended up being really good. I really hope this game sells well, because I would absolutely love if Raidou 2 got the same treatment, and, you know, maybe we'll even get a Raidou 3 at some point. The developers sure as fuck want to do it. But anyway, that's all I really have to say, so yeah, bye.